Lisa's a career change coach and the founder of the Career Clarity Method. And without further ado, I'll let her take it away.
Thank you so much, Sam. And yes, if anybody is interested, I have photos of our masked coronavirus wedding with the 10 people maximum. It's a lot of fun, but thank you all for being here. Thank you, Ricky, for the congratulations. Hello to everybody from whatever weather you are receiving and experiencing right now. I'm very excited to get to teach this today, not only because I love getting to coordinate with Fairygodboss and the incredible humans that they bring together in community, but also because I feel like this is a really important topic today. And it's an important topic right now because so many of us have had the last, 7 months be very clarifying for us, clarifying about what matters, clarifying about how our company is showing up for us or not in this time, and clarifying for how we want to show up for work and what role we want work to play in our lives. So if you're here today because you would like for things to feel better, to feel happier, to feel more easeful, maybe even to make some more money, you are in the right place, because we're going to be talking about finding the right career for you and why that can be so darn difficult and the things that you can do about that starting today. So this is going to be lots of good information, practical, actionable, and I'm going to be keeping an eyeball on the chat as we go today. So please feel free to chime in with questions, with your reflections on how this is hitting home for you, with anything that'll help to make this even more operational for you in your life. But with that, let's go ahead and dive on in. Say welcome and thank you for being here. And I want to start out with a premise, which is that I believe that you each are here for a big and kind of scary reason, which is that you believe a lot more is possible for you. Yes, even right now in a pandemic and a recession. So today we're going to talk about big dreams for what's possible. Dreams that are not limited by current circumstance, by current conditions, because life is long. Hopefully all of us still will have an opportunity to have a long career ahead of us. So we want to be thinking longitudinally, big picture, and how you can be making decisions and actions today that can set you up on a trajectory that's going to feel the way that you want to feel for the majority of your time. And we're going to be moving beyond traditional definitions of career success. We're going to talk about the real stuff: joy, freedom, impact, meaning. So much of how we are taught to think about success focuses in on this idea of getting to the corner office or getting to the C-suite or getting to whatever. And for a lot of us, that's not actually what success looks like and feels like. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how to define success on your own terms so that you can go out there and find it and achieve it. Now, let me also say from the beginning here, if you're here for job search strategies or how to get a promotion in your current job, this is probably not going to get you what you need from today's presentation. But please let Sam, the delightful moderator from Fairygodboss, let her know that you want to come to one of my other workshops, and I can absolutely do presentations on those topics in particular. But for us today, in the next 60-ish minutes of this live class, I'm going to show you the 3 reasons it is so hard to find the ideal fit career for you, and the ways that you can get past it to set yourself up on a fabulous trajectory. So you'll have the secret roadmap to these 3 obstacles and understand how you can get around them and into a dreamy, hell yes kind of a career. Because as I have come to learn in the years of doing this work, all of the tactical stuff about job search or about career change doesn't matter if you don't have clarity and confidence. And clarity comes from following a structured strategy, not from throwing spaghetti at the wall. And I will also tell you, I didn't always know this, right? I didn't wake up coming out of the womb with this sort of secret knowledge. I used to think that settling was what work was. So let me tell you a little bit about the website project that really opened my eyes. So very early on in my career, I was living and working in Washington, D.C., and I was working at a nonprofit, and I was their new media associate because the digital world was still so fresh and so new. They were calling it new media instead of digital media or online tech, anything like that. And I got the opportunity to lead the website redesign for the company. And so I knew that as a company that didn't really prioritize or value digital, we had a lot of ground to make up and a lot of possibilities to make the website awesome. It was a nonprofit that served teachers and students. So I wanted to make sure that we had great resources available for both of them that were easy to find. I wanted to make it optimized for bringing in donations to help support our work since we were a nonprofit. So I pored over the research, I pored over the data, and I put together the best of the best practices for how to create a modern, functional, snazzy, slick, effective website. So I took this to the director of development. For those of you who've worked in nonprofits, this is the person who is in charge of fundraising. And I was walking her through all the things that I had learned about online fundraising, how to optimize your website to make it easy for people to know how to give and how to be a part of your mission. And I was walking her through page after page of the PDF and the recommendations for how we could create an incredible website. And she started thumbing through it, reading through it, nodding, asking some questions. And then she starts asking for a couple of updates and changes to what's on the website. And she says, you know, I'd really prefer if we move this button here. I'd prefer if we don't have this page on the front page. I'd prefer if we had this way. And I was saying, you know what? I totally understand why that is something that makes sense to you and why that's something that you want. And funny enough, the data actually shows that users prefer a different experience and that we can better serve our community if we do it a different way. And when I gave her that feedback on, hey, here's the research, here's everything that I understand about how to do this well, she looked down at the little PDF printout and she sighed. And she looked at me and she said, Lisa, I don't care. I'm in charge here. And if I want you to put Mickey Mouse on the front page of the website, you're going to do it. And in that moment, I had a lot of things. I had a wave of shame and embarrassment and hurt wash over me. And I had a realization click into place of, they don't care about what I can bring to the table. They don't care about best practices. This is an organization that really just wants to do things their way and is kind of stuck in the mud. And in that moment, I realized if I stayed there, that was going to be my future. That was going to be the rest of my career, was being almost like the Domino's pizza delivery person. They call, they tell me what kind of pizza they want. I don't get to have any input. I don't get to offer up any value or any strategy. I just say, sure, I'll make your pizza 30 minutes or less. And I realized that was not the way I wanted to spend the remaining decades of my career and life. I wanted to be in a place where my input mattered, where I could make a difference, where I could grow and be challenged, where people wanted me to bring best practices to the table. And I'm guessing that if you're here too, you want more. You want growth. You want challenge. You want an opportunity that feels like it's better aligned with who you are. So if you are here today because you also are ready for no more settling, then you are definitely in the right place. So let's talk about the 3 biggest challenges to finding great work and how to upgrade your beliefs to upgrade your career path. Because there is absolutely a tactical piece of this, but there's a mindset piece of this too. And sometimes people think this comes across as really harsh, but I want to be direct and bold with you because I know you're here because you want something to change and you want to get results. And so here's my bold assertion for you. Career change and job search is not the most complicated thing in the world. There's nuance to it, there's strategy to it, but the biggest differentiator of the people who are getting successful results is their attitude, their mindset, their beliefs, and their perspective, and the strategy for how they approach all of it. So I want to equip you at both levels so that you're not just getting the tactical stuff, right, that you can read in a lot of different how-to articles, but you're getting the bigger picture attitude and mindset pieces that help you to be able to implement it, help you to be able to iterate on it, and help you to have the resilience and the grit to keep going and know how to keep moving forward when it feels like you're not getting the results that you want. So through that, I'm also going to share some stories of previous folks that I've worked with and how they've implemented this kind of stuff so that you can hear it both at the theoretical level and at the implemented level. And quickly, just to let you know a little bit more about me, because I know that Sam went over it super fast at the beginning. My name is Lisa Lewis, although it's now Lisa Lewis and Miller because I got married earlier this year. I'm a recovering perfectionist, obsessive learner, fellow overachiever to those of you who are taking time out of your day to watch this webinar, and a definite Ravenclaw. And I have had the huge honor of getting to be quoted in all kinds of incredible publications about career change, career fulfillment, career pathing. But the thing that probably matters most to each of you is that I've also been so fortunate to help more than 500 people, coming up on 600 people now, land at incredible companies like these. These are all places where folks I work with have landed. So we know that this approach and this strategy works. So I'm so excited to get to share it with you today. So let's talk about reason number 1 of our 3, why finding the right career is so dang hard. Truth bomb number 1, reason number 1, it is hard to find a hell yes job when we are not 100% sure exactly what we want. So let me ask you in the chat box here, how many people who are here today feel pretty comfortable that you know what you don't want? Right? The things that you would like to get rid of, the things that you would like to delegate, the things you would never want to do again are pretty clear to you. Maureen is saying yes. Elizabeth saying yes. Gia, Karen, Meg, Diana, hell yes. Yeah. When we identify things in our life that we do not want anymore, you can feel the truth of it at a visceral level. This does not feel good. I almost feel myself physically pulling away from it or getting a stomach ache or feeling stress and tension in my shoulders. Karen, I love it. I have a list of what I don't want. Good for you. That is a fabulous starting point. But I can imagine if you're really pretty clear on what you don't want, you also feel that challenge of that's not an easy way to figure out what to move towards, what you do want. So again, just let me know in the chat, how many people here wish it was easier to know exactly what you do want, right? The don't wants seem to be pretty crystal clear, but getting a sense of, well, if I don't want this, what do I want can sometimes feel way more elusive. Brianna saying all the time, Cynthia saying preach, love it. Yes, absolutely more difficult. Yeah, well, you're in luck because if any of these things apply to any of you, I have a theory for why it is difficult to know what you want and how we can help you with that. So let me know again in the chat, do any of these things apply to you? Did you get good grades in school? Did you take AP or honors classes? Did you get into a good college, university? Were you in an honors program? Did you get a fairly impressive job after graduating? And it's any of these, right? If just 1 or 2 of these apply to you, this whole category applies to you. Are you psychic? Yes, totally. How did you know? From Jessica, Andrea, yes, all of the above. Except the impressive job, Leslie, totally. Yeah. And the impressive looking job piece can really be a function of your market and what you go into after your major. So that's why I'm saying if any of these resonate for you, this whole next section totally applies to you. So you, if any of those things apply to you, you won the academic achievement game. You were taught to learn, master, and excel at everything that was put in front of you. You're explicitly taught how to do algebra or to write a fantastic essay, but you were never taught how to craft a soulful, fulfilling career and life. And having to master everything in front of you is actually part of the problem, right? When you are put into an academic situation where it does not matter if you don't like chemistry or you don't like English or you don't like whatever, you still need to get an A or a B so you can get into a good school and you can get a good job. We start to become disassociated between what we want, what we value, what we like, and who we are, and what the world is asking us to do and perform. Right? When you run the race of school with blinders on, exclusively focused on getting across the finish line to get into that good school and magically find a good job, that focus on running the academic race teaches you to separate your behavior from what you actually want. right? It doesn't matter if you love biology and you want to spend all day on biology, you still need to do your calculus homework, right? It doesn't matter if you hate chemistry or whatever, I'm picking on chemistry today. You still have to do a good job in that because it's important to colleges. It's important to look well-rounded. It's important to whatever. And so when we're young and impressionable and we're taught that this academic race is worth running and worth winning, we accidentally let other people define what success is, which can leave us feeling confused and swirling as we mature into adulthood. So let me do another check-in in the chat here. Is any of this resonating for you? Have you ever felt disconnected from your heart, your soul, or your deepest desires? And this, like, even one up here, if you felt this disconnection, but you've also looked objectively at your life and been like, well, like I can hold down a job, I can pay my rent, I can do a lot of the things that are sort of the check marks of adulthood, but I don't feel fulfilled by it. Check in the chat. Anne saying absolutely, Becky saying all the time, Brianna saying truth, Leslie saying definitely, completely from Cynthia, Maria saying yes, especially this year, Meg is saying daily, Ricky saying totally, and I'm hard on myself, so it's a crazy cycle. Yes, we're going to talk a little bit more about that here too. Elaine saying sadly, Beth saying, and it's even harder when you're successful at your current job. 100%. This presentation today is absolutely for you if you can do your current job fine, right? You can meet expectations in it, but it doesn't feel good in the doing, because this disconnect results from exactly that childhood and that academic upbringing that we're talking about, right? When we're taught it doesn't matter if you like it, just do it. It is unsurprising that we end up in jobs, you know, decades into our professional life that echo that exact same philosophy. Yeah, Caroline saying, shut up and do the work. Yeah, that can be something you hear from your boss. That can be something you hear from your family. That can be something you hear from mentors or coaches or teachers. It can feel really, really challenging to try to get to what feels good and what feels right. So if this is resonating for you and you want to learn how to feel confident and clear about what you want and feel like there is soulfulness and heart-centeredness in how you're moving forward, then grab a place to take some quick notes here, because I'm going to share a story about Olivia, and then I'm going to share a framework with you that'll help you to start to reconnect with who you are and what you want. So Olivia, when we met, she had just left a super, super successful role. So Beth, this is speaking totally to your point. She was closing $1 million sales deals for a social media company you have all heard of, and you probably all have profiles on, because she was burned the heck out. And she said, success got to my head and it almost became my identity. It consumed me and I focused on the wrong things. And I thought, if this is all there is, there's something missing. I should be feeling joyous and happy with my achievements, and that's not the case. So what she discovered was exactly what we just walked through together, that she'd been programmed to find work that looked impressive and ignore how it felt on the inside. And regardless of how you feel about Tony Robbins, I feel like this quote is particularly apt, that success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. We want success because of how we think it's going to make us feel. And if we don't feel the way that we want to feel, but we're achieving the things that other people expect us to achieve, we've got to reconcile those things. So as Lisa is aptly pointing out in the chat about the main point, you might be wondering, how do I define the kind of fulfilling work that I want? How do I reconcile this disconnect that's happened? So I, as a career change coach, have thrown myself down the research rabbit hole trying to figure out how to understand and answer this. And what I discovered is that a lot of the books out there on career development, career progression, career pathing will show you pieces of the puzzle, right? Some books are great at, let's talk about job search. Some books are great at, let's talk about how to reconnect yourself with your heart and soul. Some books are great at, let's talk about how to generate ideas for what you might want to do. But there really aren't a whole lot of good resources out there that put it all together. Reconnect with yourself, figure out ideas for what you want to do, effectively execute on a job search. So I wanted to take that information and put it into one cohesive framework that I call the 4 pillars of career fulfillment. So if you are wanting to feel reconnected with what you want, take some notes on this. The 4 pillars of career fulfillment are the 4 drivers that everybody who is happy and satisfied in their work tends to be satisfied on. So these 4 dimensions. I'll walk through each of them here in a moment, but the 4 dimensions are: number 1, your strengths and gifts. Number 2, your personality. Number 3, your interests, and we call them magnetic interests around here. And number 4, your lifestyle desires. So let's talk about strengths, pillar number 1. So your strengths and gifts, to find out if you are feeling fulfilled and satisfied here, the question you should be asking yourself is, am I in a role where I get to use my gifts daily that allows for me to stretch and grow in them, and where I feel like I'm bringing all of them or a majority of them to life in my work? And this is the place where Olivia was super out of alignment. She was doing stuff that she was good at, but she didn't feel excited or energized by the work. So when we talk about strengths here, we talk about them as energizing and exciting, as well as things that you are good at or that you want to get even better at, right? That have some sort of natural motivation for challenge and growth in them. Because if we just look at all the stuff that you can do, right? Just look at all the stuff that you're good at by itself, it can oftentimes lead you astray because of that academic thoroughbred, running the race stuff that we were talking about before. So for Olivia, what we had to do was figure out of all the things she could do, what are the things that spark the most energy and joy for her? And she discovered that she loved working with folks on developing a career vision for themselves, developing a dream, and helping them figure out the right place to land. So she went from doing multi-million-dollar ad sales into making the change into being a leadership recruiter for another tech company in Austin, and has been loving being able to bring some of her background, in persuasion and telling people about great opportunities, to her true strengths in helping people to develop their own vision and their own pathway for where they want to go in their work. So that's pillar number 1, strengths. And notice here that we had 4 circles, 4 pillars. So strengths are important, but they're only a quarter of the fulfillment equation. When we think about how traditional job searching is structured, you know this. If you go on Indeed or LinkedIn and you're looking at opportunities, the description of the job is almost 100% rooted in your strengths. They don't talk about lifestyle, personality, or interests as part of the equation. So understanding that strengths are important, but they're only a piece of the puzzle, can also help you to really revitalize or totally reimagine the way that you approach searching for the opportunities that are going to be a good fit for you. So piece number 1 of the 4 pillars of career fulfillment is strengths and gifts, and identifying where you feel the most energy, the most natural motivation, and the most desire to grow. Pillar number 2 is the personality pillar. So the personality pillar, the question you should be asking yourself is, do I feel like I am in an organization and a culture and a team and a supervisory relationship where I feel like I can bring my whole self to work, right? And I understand that for all of us, we do a certain amount of code switching in the office, right? We talk to our boss differently than we talk to our mom, or we talk to our best friend on the phone typically. But the goal here is to find an environment that has enough psychological safety and that sees and recognizes enough about your personality and your natural wiring and is in enough alignment with your values that you feel like you can bring a big percentage of yourself to the work, where you don't feel like you have to hide. You don't feel like you have to play small. You don't feel like you have to keep your voice quiet. You don't feel like you have to pretend like you don't have a perspective or experiences that you have, where people see you and value you for you. So let me share a little bit about Jason's story here and how he found personality fit. So Jason in Ohio majored in engineering, but became a teacher because he wanted to work with people, right? So he had a personality where he came across as introverted, but he really loved collaboration. So he wanted to be in a space where he could do a little bit of both. Teaching was too much extroverting. That was too much people time. He didn't feel like he was able to be fully bringing his personality and his energy because he was ending up too drained because of too much extroverting. So he went back into engineering management and development. But then that was swinging the pendulum a little bit too far in the other direction. That was too far in the introverting direction. And he still felt like things were just out of whack. And he wasn't sure how to bridge the gap and bring the two together. So after working together, Jason defined the path to more career fulfillment by becoming an intrapreneur. So creating an entrepreneurial path within his organization and making a transition into a role where he was running new business development for his company. So he was collaborative with the folks across different teams with putting together proposals. He was getting to be client facing and have the entrepreneurial or the extroverting opportunities working with prospective clients and with company leadership. But he also got the opportunity to be heads down, cranking on work, putting together proposals, coming up with budgets, staffing things, getting to use both halves of his personality in a way that felt really, really good. So think about personality fit and how you can find a role that allows for you to feel energized because it's working in natural alignment with the way that you're wired. That's pillar number 2. Pillar number 3 is a magnetic interests. And actually, Leslie, I just saw your question come through in the chat. So Leslie asked, what if you're not currently working? How does a strategy like Jason's change? So the only way that a strategy like Jason's changes is that instead of looking for a role to shift into, you just think about what kind of a role you'd like to step into right now. What kind of a role feels like it is going to give you the opportunity to speak to the different components of your personality? And introversion and extroversion are just one of them, right? You could be a person who likes a lot of structure. You might be a person who likes a lot of space and creativity and ability to adapt. You might be very emotionally oriented and people oriented. You might be very analytically oriented and numbers oriented. So each of those personality features has an opportunity to be aligned with and spoken to in a role, in a company culture, and within a team. So identifying when you feel most energized and most thriving, and then figuring out how to find that in a role will set you up for great success there on the personality piece. So thank you for that question. Now let's talk about magnetic interests. I want to share Rachel's story here. So for interests, the question to ask yourself to help get clear on what you want is at the micro level, so the things that I'm doing in my day-to-day job, and then the macro level, the things that are happening in this industry, the things that are happening within the company, what kinds of problems am I most naturally attracted towards solving? Am I interested in more strategy problems? Am I interested in more execution problems? Am I interested in more people-oriented stuff? Am I interested in more business systems-oriented stuff? And we'll talk a little bit about Rachel and her story here. So Rachel in Chicago went from bouncing between a handful of jobs that felt like they didn't quite fit to negotiating a full-time job offer doing marketing project management, where she could nurture her magnetic interest in outdoor recreation through her work. So she knew 2 things about her interest. Number 1 is that she really enjoyed project management, program management, and keeping all the different pieces organized. And she also knew that she had an interest in outdoor recreation, travel, getting to be in nature. And at first blush, it was really challenging to think about how on earth those things come together, right? Because a lot of the natural advice or the natural inclinations would be like, well, take a look at opportunities to be a park ranger or something like that. And so we just got creative with her magnetic interests to say, what are all the different extensions that outdoor recreation could have into good paying jobs? And that was the way that we were able to integrate more of this so that she felt more connected to the project management work that she was doing because it was advancing something that she felt passionate and excited about. So that is pillar number 3. Pillar number 4 is the lifestyle pillar. So the question to ask yourself on the lifestyle pillar is twofold. It's number 1, what do I need work to be giving me to make this feel good? Right? And this is a question of compensation. This is a question of benefits. This is a question of flexibility and freedom. Piece number 2 to the lifestyle question is, how do I want work to fit into my life? Do I want work to be taking up 50, 60 hours a week because it feels like it is 100% my calling and the place where I want to be investing my time and my energy? Do I want work to just be work? And I want to be clocking in and putting in my 40 hours and coming home because I have built a really rich and satisfying personal life. No answer to this is right or wrong, but it's important to know the distinction for yourself so that you know what a good fit job is going to look like versus a poor fit job. And you know the sorts of boundaries you need to set to make sure it feels sustainable over the long term. So let me share Tanya's story, because Tanya's story is a little bit unbelievable, which I think is why it's so important to give you as some dream fodder here. So Tanya is an American expat who wanted to land a job in London, and she'd had a successful career working for entertainment brands in the state, but wanted to find more soulful work and wanted a job where she had tons of lifestyle flexibility. She wanted autonomy. She wanted to be able to go to a yoga class at 10 a.m. and have that be no big deal, because as long as she got her work done whenever it was due, she would have the space to do what she needed to. And at first, we had a really hard time getting her to 100% believe that it was allowed and believe it was possible to find jobs where she could go and take a yoga class in the middle of the day if she wanted to, and to get her to be committed to doubling down on this big, scary vision. But after we got her on board, she landed a role running European events for Wanderlust, where going to yoga classes at 10 a.m. was actually part of her job. It was relationship and partnership development opportunities, which was so cool. Such incredible alignment with her values. And then she ended up using that as a springboard into a flexible, autonomous role directing corporate social responsibility at a global media company. So utilizing the flexibility and the clarity that she had on her values to then make a move into something that felt like it fit her even better. So ask yourself this same question, right? If I could get it any way that I want it, how do I want my lifestyle set up? What is the most important kind of flexibility for me right now? What's the most important environment for me to be in right now? And how do I make sure that the compensation and benefits are in alignment to make that possible for me? And let me say too, we were talking about earlier that we want to talk about defining success on your own terms. So fulfillment for you could look like it did for Olivia, Jason, Tanya, Rachel that we were just talking about. Or it could be something totally different. Ross, who I work with, started a public speaking career. Donna runs a 6-figure coaching business, and actually she has started up a brand new business. So now she runs 2 businesses. Or Erin recorded her first album, right? So each person's definition of success looks and feels different. So getting clear on what it is for you will be a critical component of then being able to find it in the world. And if you want to go deeper on the 4 pillars framework, I have a miniature ebook on my website that can be super helpful for that. So if you want to go to getcareerclarity.com/roadmap, you can download the free ebook, get a little bit more detail on the 4 pillars, dive a little bit more deeply into some of the mindset stuff that we've been talking about around believing that things are possible, preparing yourself for success, all that good stuff. So I'll pop that into the chat here real quickly in case you want to go check that out right now. Getcareerclarity.com/roadmap. But let's keep on keeping on, because I know we've got 2 more of our 3 biggest challenges to equip you to work through. Challenge number 2, truth bomb number 2. Big, bold career changes feel risky. And nobody wants to leap and then have to start over from scratch, or leap and not have the net appear, especially in a time like this. So making a change feels risky because there's a possibility you might end up even worse off than you were before, right? That's a totally understandable, reasonable thing to be thinking about when you're evaluating the risk of making a transition or a switch or trying something new. However, when we think about risk only on that side of the equation, it ends up getting you stuck. It ends up making your fears convince you, I'm never going to be able to find anything else better. It's safer to stay here. Maybe I should be here for another year. And let me tell you, I used to work in communications consulting, and that exact line of logic kept me stuck in a crappy job for 2 years too long, right? I was at the job for 4.5 years, and I knew 2 years in that this organization didn't value me. They didn't care about me as a human. They just thought about me as a piece of human capital that they could just plug in. And I had convinced myself that there was nothing else better out there and that it was too risky to change. So I suffered through being treated that way for 2 years longer than I needed to. That is why we have to redefine risk, because insofar as there is risk of what happens when you leave, there's also major risk in what happens if you're staying, right? And this is speaking especially to any of you listening who are currently in a role, and maybe coronavirus has really clarified for you that your organization is not taking the kind of care of you that they should or that you need. They're not giving you the kind of flexibility or grace that this time requires. And there are companies out there that are taking care of their people, and you deserve to at least know about them, if not make a transition into them. So go with me here on a little bit of a guided visualization, a guided exploration. Imagine that it is 10 years from now, 2030. We can even imagine that that's possible. And you're still in this same job situation. You know, maybe you have gotten promoted or gotten a newer computer, but it's the same team and the same projects over and over again. How would that feel? And let me know in the chat, you know, are you on a path right now where you're going to be excited and glad that you're still on it in 10 years? Does that feel motivational? Does that feel aligned with your values? Does it feel like it's empowering you to show up as the kind of person you want to be and to live the kind of life you want? Again, lots of exclamation points when people are talking about this one. Wendy's saying no way, Maureen saying absolutely not. Natalie is thrown in 3 exclamation points. Yeah, Laurel, Rachel, Diana, if it looks like today, then no way, not at all. Yeah, this is a really, really clarifying question. So instead of thinking solely about the risk of leaving, let's also talk about what's the risk of staying. And as for the risk in leaving, you absolutely can make a shift and manage transition risks at the same time. And in fact, this is not just me saying this, right? Don't trust me, don't take my word for this. This is what most top performers do on a regular basis. I thought this was fascinating. In an article from Fast Company a couple years ago, the former VP of talent for Netflix said in a quote that top talent is expected to switch jobs or companies every 3 years. That the people who are looking down on an organization and planning for succession plans, planning for grooming, planning for talent development and retention, this is what they think. They think that top folks are going to be switching jobs or companies every 3 years. So this is expected. And people like you who are showing up to watch a webinar in some of your spare time, giving up some of your precious spare time for this, who I like to call lovingly learning junkies. Learning junkies like us will outgrow our current roles and responsibilities faster than other people, right? If you enjoy learning and growth and challenge, you are not going to be satisfied doing the exact same job for 20 years. Other people who value safety, security, stability, predictability, they might be totally fine working in the same thing, who, you know, do the same thing year after year, decade after decade. But if you're here and you care about growth and challenge and learning, that is unlikely to be you. So it's actually okay to be thinking about what you want to grow into next, where your next challenge might be, how you might be able to serve in a different capacity next. Leslie, I'm seeing your question come in the chat. Leslie's asking, does this also apply to people who are mulling self-employment? Absolutely. And let me also say that self-employment can take many, many forms, and you can make it as varied or as stable and predictable as you want. Because once you're the boss, you get to have a lot of control over how you are pitching yourself to organizations or what sorts of products you're creating. If you want to create a product-based business, you are totally in control over what are the things you want to do, what are the things you don't want to do, what are the things you're willing to do. So that can give you a lot of novelty and change. And sometimes that's a little bit too much for some people, but those of us who have a secret entrepreneurial itch usually know it. And let me also say that the one right job model never really worked for people who love to grow and advance anyways. And Karen, I'll actually get to your question right here, because there are 3 fabulous folks from history who you all probably know and love, who are model career changers, who are willing to lean into being learning junkies and keep changing and re-navigating the career paths ahead of them. Julia Child worked in advertising, media, and secret intelligence before writing her first cookbook when she was 50, launching her career as a celebrity chef in 1961. This guy over here, Jonah Peretti, before launching viral new media sites BuzzFeed and the Huffington Post in his 30s, he was teaching middle schoolers how to use Microsoft Office as a computer science teacher. And even Pope Francis had an unlikely beginning. For those of you who've seen the two popes, you know a little bit about this, but before he was ordained, he was a bouncer and he was a lab tech and he did all sorts of stuff and he was bouncing around at a bar at his home in Argentina before he got clear on the sort of career that really felt like it would speak to him. So you are never too young, never too old to be thinking about how to make a shift into something that feels more satisfying and more fulfilling, that speaks to your heart and soul a little bit better. And I would posit that a hunger to learn, flex, and evolve in your career has become an asset, and it's not a liability anymore, right? In our parents' generations, or for some of you, depending on how old you are, it might be your grandparents' generation, it was the norm that you would go, you'd get a job at 22, and you would stay there for 40 years because you had a pension, because information was not as widely available and as easy to access as it is now with the internet. You were really rewarded for loyalty and commitment to stay at a place. And there were a lot of incentives in place to not be hungry to learn, not be hungry to grow, because you wanted to keep things stable and safe. You wanted to get to your 40-year anniversary party and have a big sheet cake and invite your family and collect your pension and go home and hang out. And that's just not the way that the talent market is structured anymore. So this desire to keep contributing and growing and adding more value is actually becoming an asset in the economy today in ways that it wasn't 30 years ago. Now, I'll also say that because the model for how the talent market works is so different, we also need a different framework for thinking about career progression. And I talk about it as a career agility framework that allows you to both lean into what fits you right now, right, to figure out what's working, and sets you up with optionality in the future so that you are not putting yourself on such a narrow path that it really takes away some of your learning and growth and evolution space. We want you to have space to keep evolving, to keep having options, to be able to keep flexing and learning on that 3-year cycle insofar as you want to. Now let's talk about truth bomb number 3, about why finding that hell yes work is so difficult and how to make sure you're set up to find it anyways. Completely rebranding yourself and rebuilding your network in order to make a change is hard, right? If you go through part 1, you get clear on your 4 pillars, you figure out what you want to do. You go through part 2 with redefining risk, trying things out, feeling confident and clear on what you want to move into. This part can still feel like it can derail you. And as an introvert, I don't know if we have any Myers-Briggs fans or junkies who are here with us. I'm an INTJ. Let me know in the chat if you've done your Myers-Briggs. But those of us who are introverted, this can feel particularly challenging and confronting, right? It's like, oh my gosh, I worked so hard to get to this point. What do you mean I need to now start going and selling myself and going to all of these networking happy hours in the basement of a bar in the city where everybody's wearing power suits and they've got a handful of business cards that they give you even before they introduce themselves. Ooh, we got a lot of Myers-Briggs folks. I'm checking in the chat. Got a lot of introvert representation here going on. Don't need the Myers-Briggs to know I'm an introvert. I appreciate that. Yep. I love we've got a couple extroverts here with us too. Are you both ENFPs? Excellent. I love it. So let's talk about truth bomb number 3 and making a transition. 70% of jobs, the Bureau of Labor Statistics puts out a study every single year, and consistently every single year, they find that 70% of jobs come from relationships, not from the hours you're spending looking at jobs on the internet. Right? So if you are one of those folks who doom scrolls on LinkedIn or Indeed looking at a million different job descriptions, the data that's collected at the countrywide level here, right? So our friend from Paris, this might not necessarily be true, although I would guess in Paris, it's probably even higher than 70% coming from relationships. The data says that the more time you're spending on relationships, the better off your job search is going to be. So if this is true, and this is what's coming out of the data, how do we make it so that it feels less terrible, especially for those of us introverts who might be personally resentful that this is true? The truth is, it doesn't have to feel exhausting, terrible, and hopeless to make a transition and build up a new network. But you got to lean into, and again, this is an attitude and mindset gauntlet here, that the more challenge and responsibility you want in your work, the more likely it is that you need to switch up your job search strategy. But rebranding yourself and talking about it with the humans can be, dare I say, fun. Sometimes I think about fun as the F word of careers because oftentimes people don't necessarily associate work and career with fun. But what I have seen after helping hundreds and hundreds of people make transitions is that effective job searching is about changing your professional brand into compelling, persuasive storytelling. So it's not about having something that feels really stuffy, really like the comic Dilbert, that's sort of boring and linear. It's about finding a way to make a connection with people and approaching networking as strategic relationship building rather than just passing out business cards, right? And I think that relationship building and thinking about this almost as if you are on a mission to make professional friends can totally reframe the experience and change the energy that you feel about doing this. And that's the important part, right? We want this to be energy giving, not energy sucking. And so if you can find people where you feel like you have a friendship connection, where the connection is deeper than just you guys do the same kind of job, it can feel so much more sustainable and satisfying. And ultimately, that person, is more likely to want to help you and put their neck out, stick their neck out for you. Now, I will say this is really hard and can take a ton of time to do on your own. So think about getting some support with this, because getting help isn't a sign of weakness, it is a sign of strength. And I would guess if you are already showing up here and leaning into getting more information and getting help in this way, those of you who are here are probably already the type to seek out help to improve your performance all the time. So a lot of us will use these sorts of humans to help us feel better, feel happier, feel healthier. And we don't necessarily think about it as getting help per se. But if you use any of these sorts of humans, a mentor, a yoga teacher, a therapist, a doctor, a nutritionist, personal trainer, chiropractor, the list can go on. You are already dipping your toe into the water of remembering you don't have to do this alone. There are people who can help you and support you, and it is worth it to get that kind of encouragement as you go. I will say this is a real quote from a client. I've never felt so energized looking at my resume. So if thinking about rebranding yourself, telling a compelling professional story, and developing relationships is something that does not feel good, you don't have to do it alone. Get help. Not just from me, right? There are tons of folks out there who can be supportive. But the punchline here is to go at it with help will make this feel better. And you get to decide what that help looks like for you. But seeking out help is never going to be a bad thing. And my resume reviews have been called Purifying Hellfire, but like in a good way, in the way that helps people to get results and land at places like IDEO, Facebook, etc. So we have talked about in our 50 minutes together so far about how and why we get stuck making career changes, the 3 biggest roadblocks, and that there's an actual framework to help you figure out what you want, manage the risks, and go get it that can feel good, just like these wonderful humans did. But information by itself is not enough. I love this quote from internet entrepreneur Derek Sivers, who says, if more information was the answer, then we would all be billionaires with perfect abs, right? If all you had to do was just read an article, it immediately took in your brain, and then you immediately changed your behavior, then everything would be fine. And reading and going to webinars like this would totally be sufficient. So again, I want to be bold with you. I want to be direct with you here because I think you're here because you want to change and you want things to be different on the other side of this webinar. So here is your gauntlet. Here's your throwdown. That if you want support to take this information and apply it to identify the ideal career direction for you, be not afraid to get some help to figure out how you can turn this into your behavior and your action and your results. And since I'm here, I also would be remiss if I didn't say I'd love to help you figure it out. I run a business called Career Clarity where we help hundreds of people do this kind of stuff all the time. And I want to make 2 offers to you to give you some initial support if dipping your toe in this water is feeling interesting and good. So offer number 1 to help you feel supported and excited and clear in your transition, is that I am really excited to announce that my first book, Career Clarity, is out in the world. You can get it at getcareerclarity.com/book. It's currently available for pre-order on Amazon, and it's literally $5. So if getting some support with thinking through this, getting clear, feeling like you understand the framework and know how to start applying it on your own feels like it would be helpful, this can be a fabulous resource for you. And I'd be totally honored and thrilled if the book felt like it was speaking to you and felt like it could be helpful to you. So option number 1, to help yourself take this information and start applying it, is there. Option number 2 is that if you're ready to take action to transform your work and you're actually wanting to get some coaching support and some one-on-one accountability, some one-on-one support with developing your ideas or coming up with your professional brand, I also wanted to make my calendar open to any of you who this is interesting for a complimentary conversation about what coaching together could look like, how it would support you, seeing if it's a really good fit. And folks can tell you, I am a big believer in the hell yes or no principle when it comes to having a coaching relationship with somebody. So if you just want to have this conversation to explore and coaching together doesn't feel like the right fit, I am also happy to point you in the direction of any other resources I know and can think about that might hit you more in stride with what you need right now. So if that sounds interesting to you, or as exciting as Michelle Taylor looking like she is ready for Halloween in a Pebbles Flintstones costume, I've helped folks all over the world, including actually in Paris. One of my favorite former clients is in Paris. And I would love to be able to support and have been super honored to get so many people to talk about the work together and how it affected their lives. So if this would be interesting to you and you want to sign up for a time to chat about what it could look like, I will put this link, getcareerclarity.com/connect, into the chat box here. So you can go ahead and snap up a time because I'd love to chat. You can tell, like, I love this work. I love helping people who are passionate and hungry and ambitious and want to do more, but are feeling stuck or feeling frustrated or feeling like they're not getting the job search traction that they want, to unlock whatever they need to on both the strategy level and the tactical level to make moves and land at a place that is going to value you, appreciate you, cherish you, empower you, and compensate you appropriately. So if this is something you'd love some support with and you want to have a conversation, I would love to chat. So you can reach me at getcareerclarity.com/connect. But with that, we are at the end of our conversation for today. We've got a couple minutes if anybody's got questions, and I just noticed a few came through in the Q&A. So Sam, if you want to come back on here, I'll go ahead and pop out of screen share mode and we can address a couple of those and then we'll let y'all go. But again, if you've got questions that you want to ask and you don't feel comfortable asking them right now, or you've got to jump, getcareerclarity.com/connect is a fabulous way to set up some time to chat too.
We'll also be including those links in the follow-up email along with the recording of today's session so you can access it back and you'll have them all at your fingertips if you didn't happen to catch them in the chat. So don't worry about that. But we have a few minutes left, so let's jump right in. This is an interesting question from an anonymous attendee. They said, what if you have a career you love, it's extremely fulfilling, but the industry is dead right now due to COVID? Do you have any advice or tips on that?
Yeah, first of all, this sucks and I'm sorry. And unfortunately, the best tip that I have for you is that we've got to watch what's going on in the marketplace right now. That hospitality has taken a hit and it's probably going to take a little bit of time to recover. So my biggest advice for you, and what I've been giving to a lot of folks who have been affected in this way from the pandemic, is to take a look at the ways in which your skills and capabilities might transfer to what we're calling perpendicular industries. So if you work in hospitality, then I'll make some assumptions here just for the example's sake, and I hope that this example resonates with you. So if you work in hospitality, you are probably very focused on how to create incredible customer experiences, how to do a lot of handling logistics and details related to events to make sure that people feel like they have a really smooth experience. You are great at surprising and delighting people to make sure that they feel excited and satisfied by what they're going through. So perpendicular places to go would be other industries that are doing fine right now where they can use that kind of skill set. So just as an example, because again, there are tons more than just the one I'm going to give you right now, but a place to think about might be, what are some organizations that are more digitally based? So they haven't been affected in the same way that hospitality has, where they still need people to help create really beautiful experiences. Are there opportunities to help with customer experience or onboarding for a company that's more digital and figure out how to take the transferability of my skills and put them online? That's my best advice for you for the short term. But also what we have seen is consistently, given enough time, the market never doesn't recover, right? And hospitality is not dead right now because the world has shifted in such a way that nobody wants to travel, right? It has shifted because of some out of our control pieces, but people are still going to be wanting escapes. People are still going to be wanting vacations. People are still going to be wanting to create meaningful experiences. So the industry is going to come back. So don't feel like you have to give up on hospitality for good, but think about the ways that you can find a transferable spot in a perpendicular industry to land at least for the next year or two to give it some time to recover. Or think about ways that you might be able to do hospitality really creatively right now in a way that better speaks to our COVID reality. Right?
Yeah.
So there might be opportunities to work at places where you can help with establishing the highest standards for safety and health practices to make it super safe and comfortable to invite people in even in these times. So
Yeah.
let me know if that helps, but I am sorry because that's a crappy situation and it's happening to folks in travel, it's happening to folks in hospitality. And it does not mean that what you bring to the table is not valuable. And it does not mean that you're not employable. It just means for the short term, finding a bridge job, finding a sort of lily pad to jump onto to hang out for a little while is probably going to be your best bet.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I know we're almost out of time, but I just want to get to this one question from Elizabeth here because I think it's something that we all could stand to hear some advice on. She asked, how do you deal with imposter syndrome? And especially when you're writing this new version of your resume that you talked about.
Yes. Oh, I love this question. Okay. So imposter syndrome is the feeling, if anybody's listening to this, I don't know, it's the feeling of like, oh gosh, I don't want to put myself out there and seem too big for my britches. I don't want to put myself out there saying that I can do things that I'm not 100% sure that I can do. It's coming from a little bit of nervousness and self-doubt. But the root of imposter syndrome is in your integrity. Because what it says is, I want to show up and fulfill the promise that I'm making to somebody about what I can do and what I'm capable of. And your integrity is going to be a really, really valuable thing to a future employer. So if you're wrestling with imposter syndrome in your resume, the very first thing to do is to go back and root yourself in the data. What did you actually do? What are your actual past experiences? What was the actual role? What were the actual results? Because sometimes when you look at the things you've already done, it reminds you about capabilities and accomplishments that you just plumb forgot about, right? Or you might have discounted, but that oftentimes have a ton of value and a ton of transferability to what you want to do moving forward. So start by grounding yourself in what's working, what you've done. But the second thing to think about if imposter syndrome is coming up is notice where those gaps are that are triggering the self-doubt and triggering the imposter syndrome, and ask yourself, what actions could I take to help bridge that gap and to feel like I can step into that with a little bit more confidence and a little bit more sense of self-assuredness? Because sometimes imposter syndrome comes up because you're thinking, oh gosh, I was working in logistics and now I want to move into working in medical devices, and I don't know anything about medical devices, but I'm excited about them. And sometimes all you've got to do to bridge the imposter syndrome gap there is take a class or listen to some good podcasts about folks who work in that industry who are being interviewed talking about their experience. So
Yeah.
I have a whole article on imposter syndrome, and Sam, maybe I'll send that over to you to send out as follow-up for this in case you want to reference it, that talks about, I think it's like 8 steps to wrestling with imposter syndrome, but those 2 are the biggest ones.
Yeah, no, definitely send that over. I can get it included in that follow-up email. But thank you for that. It's really great advice. And I've never heard somebody talking about finding the ways to actually bridge the gaps by taking classes and stuff. So that's a really interesting piece of advice there. And so with that, it looks like we are just about out of time. I want to say thank you so much, Lisa, again, for a wonderful presentation. It looks like everybody learned a lot and was really engaged throughout. So appreciate you spending your time with us today. And thank you, everybody, for taking an hour out of your day to be with us. We really appreciate it. And we will catch you at the next webinar. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks so much, Sam.